na ye ho nte ewo nim bi eni ho oba onase a oba no kwa ti ya ba onase bitie unyame wasem na fi kwan ye befa so atena ase asetena ibenya hoɔden ne akwan ho san ne de asomowo enu nti enumre akoma biara atwa hyia w'anim ewo lai so ye de ye ho ehye wo nsa kasamafo a woyi no ama ye enumre nso ye de no ehye wo nsa yempaye pa ne sɛ dwumadie nyina bekɔ wie no na yesua bibi afiri mu a ebeboa yɛn awie bere mu ama yɛ ahoɔden ne nyansa ne yɛtumi atena ase ama wo Nyankopɔn dwumadie nyina kɔ wie a esan sɛ wo na wodi yɛ nim nti yɛde wo na ase ne wɔyɛ yie bɛma wo we ni adom ne nhyira ne yɛbisa efiri yɛ na gyenkwa Yesu Kristo din mu nti amen.
Amen. Openi yadawasi. Dise osofo aba yabestre no na wa introduce speaker no amaye. Okay, osofo eldaso woni problem na anti. Mama men kan bibi mfa sister Juliet Opoku. Sister Juliet yenya yinua ba ya maame ya damfo prekupe. Sister Juliet registered nurse and certified diabetes educator. The GDE is one experience mono why education be brave ama institutions na edruyen so ama Sister Juliet any babeche ni nim de onim elfa diabetes in particular ehun senia ye hunu was screen so no I'm say or see hypertension management diabetes and complications are related to diabetes. Sister Juliet a bachelor and said ya so say it be high and I say be boy upon so bon some percent diabetes a bekoya suabua e be hu kwan ya befa so a e be sia no. Sister Juliet mensa mrebebre no ye be jai hama unyame onka ho.
Matemedase papa. For good evening. Pacho said your papa is kind, no. Your family Juliet Opoku, a registered nurse na Messiah diabetes and certified bariatric educator. Na and then my name of but na me then I'm asking someone invited me some name meche information about diabetes. Into time na me mama ni kakra but I'll do my best. Into no me kasa kakra na afi me towards the end no. To more questions be now so busa to the way I to start off no so I made diabetes education. I go on different programs. I'm part of GCAO Ghana Union. It's our own program that I do on YouTube, and then also my own company that I do health teaching. So the anytime there will be here more be a community name anywhere, I'm everywhere to be here more in terms of diabetes management, in terms of say maybe I will need papers, but unfortunately no we hear doctor or hospital charge, but companies now no me edumano e betima hwe bra uni o hipra e betima boa so diabetes who say hypertension say any medical issue be a will be say wo ha na visa wu ana say wo akwa na oni papers na say ube o frame a metima connect wa ma wanya doctor obeboa wo na say ko your blood work and so ko the obekwa ko be in terms of health no will be covered for you and I say wo ha say obesity be a unua wo visa but a friend say e be oba wa be yare and also clinics or metima connect to us and also metima point no I'm here for the community. Any what be a meeting the abua be a no. That's my bread and butter. See anything be a here be no. So we will be sa bit my refer no na so what be a meeting the abua be a okay, so we'll go into and I going to back any tree. Let's say tree ni bro for the better fra. In some time be now until I say a bit me busa o question bit me busa tree man so bit me busa bro either or. Okay, and you know, so when we talk about diabetes now, diabetes yeah come your friend city yare. It's yare about a woman. Now, what happens in your body? They say so. You can't do a city area. It's not so much. Say be aware the city too much. And tina, friends when you city area. Now to explain it, so the bear may explain it. Management and it make sense. No. So diabetes is a chronic illness. So me can say yare friend of crown meaning that it's always there. So it's a chronic illness. It's an endocrine disease. So it affects. It's part of the endocrine illnesses. So where there's many types of diabetes. That's why there's not just the word diabetes. There's type 1, type 2, there's gestational diabetes, and then now there's something called pre-diabetes. So these are all along the same line. So usually what happens in the body is that if you're said to have diabetes, what's happening in the body is that your body is not able to make insulin. So normally when we eat, so natural sugar woman, and natural sugar woman, maybe all our grains and starches, all our milk products, and all our fruits. So these foods have natural sugar in them. So when we eat those, it goes into our stomach and our body digests it or break it down into glucose, which is sugar. So then what's supposed to happen after that is that our pancreas is an organ in our body called the pancreas. And the pancreas job is to release insulin into our bloodstream when it senses that the blood sugar is high after we eat. And this is a normal process. We eat the food, goes in our stomach, we digest it, sugar level goes high in our blood system, and then the pancreas job is to release insulin. And insulin is a hormone, and its job is to take the sugar that's in our blood to feed it to our cells so we can use it as energy. So think of insulin as your transporter of sugar. So without insulin, the sugar that's in your blood just sits there. It doesn't go anywhere. So you need insulin as a carrier or as a key to the doors of your cells so it can move into your cells for us to use it to live and use it as energy. But when you're said to have diabetes, depends on the type you have, most of the time what's happening is that either your body doesn't make any insulin, so that's type 1 diabetes. Your body, the pancreas, the cells in the pancreas, the beta cells, does not make any insulin at all. So then as you can imagine, after you eat, the sugar just sits in your blood, right? And when the sugar sits in your blood so high, it's not good for you. Sometimes another thing that could happen is that even though your body makes the insulin, if the insulin that your body makes doesn't work properly, or the insulin that your body, the body doesn't make enough insulin and it doesn't work properly. So that's type 2 diabetes. So type 2 diabetes, usually we call it adult onset diabetes, because usually your body starts off making some insulin, and then with lifestyle changes, family history, and all of that can move a person at risk into type 2 diabetes. So type 2 is when your body makes some insulin, but it doesn't work properly or it doesn't make enough, right? And then you have gestational diabetes, which is usually is for women. So when women are pregnant, within 24 to 28 weeks, because of the insulin resistance and the weight gain and the expansion of the belly, the insulin that our body makes doesn't work properly. So we call that insulin resistance. So with that, a person can develop diabetes while they're pregnant, and that's called gestational diabetes. That's why for those women that's been pregnant in Canada, you notice that when you're between 24 weeks to 28 weeks, your family doctor will send you to go get blood work done. And when you go, they'll give you something sweet to drink, and then they'll check your blood sugar after. So what we're doing is we're checking to see if your body is able to make enough insulin to deal with that sugar load that we just have you drink and put in your body, right? So based on the numbers that we get, will tell us whether you are at risk for diabetes, if you have diabetes, if you have gestational diabetes. And then now there's a term called borderline diabetes or pre-diabetes. So borderline diabetes is not diabetes. So what that means is that your sugar is a little bit high, but it's not high enough for us to call it type 2 diabetes yet, right? So borderline diabetes is along the same line as type 2 diabetes. So you go from borderline or pre-diabetes to type 2 diabetes. So same thing is starting to happen in the body where the pancreas, which is the organ that makes insulin, is not making enough insulin, and so that your sugar is a little bit high. But high sugar, whether it's a little bit high or a lot high, it's still damaging to the body, right? Because everything in our body works in a balance. So the minute the balance is tipped off, that's when diseases start to form, right? So with diabetes, it's not a life sentence. I always tell to people, it's not a life sentence, it's a lifestyle management. So diabetes cannot be cured, but it can be managed. I work in a clinic where I have clients from all ages, up to age 98 and some over 100. So getting diabetes doesn't mean that it's a life sentence and that you're going to die quickly. It all depends on what you're going to do to prevent the complications of diabetes. So the complications of diabetes, of course, comes with the fact that your sugar is high, because our body, wherever blood goes, that's where the sugar is, right? So when you have diabetes, I always say, affects you from your head to your toe. So everything in your body is affected by diabetes. Why? Because your blood flows everywhere, and wherever blood goes, sugar goes with it. And that could lead to a lot of issues in terms of, chronic illnesses. Like it can lead to high cholesterol, it can cause hypertension, it can lead to nerve damages, it can cause heart problems, it can lead to stroke, it can lead to neuropathy, which is, damages to the nerves in your legs, where sometimes people step on something sharp, they wouldn't even feel. So these are all signs and symptoms and complications that can lead to diabetes can bring on. So how do we know if somebody has diabetes, right? So diabetes is that there are symptoms. So there's symptoms of diabetes, which is the general symptoms. Usually the hallmark symptoms is increased thirst. So you're very thirsty all the time. No matter how much fluid you drink, you still feel thirsty. So that's one of the signs. Frequent urination. So you're going to the bathroom and you're peeing a lot and all the time. Like you wake up in the middle of the night, throughout the day, you're peeing and peeing and peeing. So that could be a sign of diabetes. Feeling really, really extremely tired and fatigued. That's the sign of diabetes. Could be a sign of diabetes. Dry skin, dry mouth could be all signs of diabetes. Blurred vision. So you're kind of seeing double, or you're not seeing properly. Like everything looks blurry. That's a sign. It could be a sign of diabetes. And then slow healing wounds. So if you cut yourself, like I said, you cut yourself, it takes a long time to heal. So these are some of the symptoms of diabetes, but not everybody that has diabetes get these symptoms. So there's some people that are out there that have diabetes and they can have it for years and they wouldn't know they have it because they don't get any symptoms. So not having symptoms doesn't mean that you're healthy. So always remember that. It's very important for you to always, fortunately for us, we live in Canada where, the healthcare is very accessible. So I encourage everyone to get your routine blood work done, go for physical, because not having symptoms and feeling okay is not a sign that everything is fine, because there are some people that could have diabetes for years without knowing. And whether you know it, if you have diabetes, or you don't know it, the damaging is still happening in the body, right? Because the high sugars, think of syrup, right? So when you have high sugars, your blood becomes very thick, right? Think of syrup or honey. So when you have thick blood flowing through your body, your heart has to work very hard, because our heart is the pump. It's the pump in the body, right? So if our blood is very thick, the pump has to work extra hard to push the blood all around, right? And in doing that, it needs a lot of pressure to push the blood around. So in doing so, what happens? You have high blood pressure, because your heart now needs a lot of pressure to push the thick blood around. And in doing that, it's causing damages to your heart, right? Your heart can physically enlarge. You're causing damages to the arteries and veins. So those are the tubes that your blood flow through. They're causing damage to them. And they're causing damage to your other vital organs, all the important organs in our body, right? So when you have diabetes, that's why when you have diabetes, your risk of heart disease increases, because your heart is working extra hard. And then and the reason why you become very thirsty all the time when you have some of the symptoms, become very thirsty, is the fact that our kidney, it's like the filter in our body. So the kidney is a filter. And when your sugar is very high, the kidney is saying, okay, well, there's too much sugar in the blood. This is not good for the organ. So I need to get rid of the sugar. So in getting rid of the sugar, because we can't pee out crystal sugars, right? So the sugar has to be dissolved in water, and that's why we're peeing a lot. So your kidney is trying to clear all the sugar from your system so that it could be balanced, right? But because the mechanism, so in terms of your pancreas and everything working together, it's not working because you have diabetes. It just keeps working extra hard trying to pump out sugar. And that's why sometimes if a person we can do a urine test to see if a person has diabetes, right? Or if a lot of sugar is being cleared through the urine. So that's one way. So that's why you're peeing a lot, and that's a sign of high sugar. And because you're peeing a lot, of course you're going to be thirsty. right? Because your kidney is pulling lots of fluid from your body to help clear out the sugar, so then you become thirsty and you keep drinking, right? Because the sugar is not going anywhere because you don't have enough insulin to take it away or to put it so you can use it as energy. And the reason why you're tired is because sugar is our energy, right? We get glucose is our energy, and that's what our brain and the vital organs feeds on, right? So if your sugar level is too high, right, because it's very high, but it's just sitting in your blood, it's not moving anywhere into your cells, right? Because you don't have enough insulin to do the job. And because of that, even though the energy is high and it's sitting there in your blood, you're still not getting it because you don't have enough insulin to carry it to your cells. So this is why most people are very tired when they have diabetes, very, very weak, because the sugar is just high, but it's not being moved anywhere else. And then itchy skin is the same thing with the dryness, because your body is trying, your kidneys pulling a lot of fluid from your body, and because of doing that, it's like you're pulling so much fluid that your skin becomes dry, your mouth becomes dry, your throat becomes dry. These are all from pulling of the fluid. And the blurred vision, it's the same thing. Energy is our sugar, so wherever, and I said sugar goes everywhere the blood goes because it's in the blood. So when you have high sugars, it starts to cause coating around the nerves in the eye, and that's why some people will have the blurred vision or they can't see properly when their sugar is high. So these are all symptoms, and these are the complications if nothing gets done. So if you do nothing to help yourself and you just sit there and let the diabetes take charge, then these things can happen, right? But there's many ways you can manage diabetes and live healthy, normal life. Right? So these are all some of the symptoms. Once again, wound healing. And the reason why your wound is healing slow is because bacteria loves sugar. So wherever the sugar is sitting, the bacteria loves to be around there. So then obviously, because if you have a lot of bacteria there, then the wound is not going to grow. It's not going to go away. And also when you have diabetes, the blood flow, like I said earlier, your blood is not flowing as easily as somebody that doesn't have diabetes, because when you have diabetes, your blood is much thicker, and because it's thicker, it's not able to flow normally and nicely to all the places that it needs to go. So you have decreased circulation because of diabetes, and all that will make your wound, if you have any cut, will make it take a long time for you to heal, right? And then the sugar also coats your nerves, so which also cause numbness and can lead to pain and all of that. All of it leading to, if untreated, can lead to amputation and other complications of diabetes. Right? So we've talked about the complications. So the eye disease, the heart disease, kidney disease, nerve damages, gum disease. So gum disease is one thing that also could be caused by high sugar, because you have a lot of sugar hanging around. There's a high chance of getting mouth infection, and whatever affects our gums and our mouth is very linked to our heart. So mouth care is very important when you have diabetes, because you don't want a lot of bacteria in your mouth, because that could also cause damages to the heart and the vessels, right? And then of course, your blood vessels. So the tubes that your blood flows through could be also damaged by the high sugars, right? So these are the complications of diabetes, right? So then knowing all of this, just going back a little bit. So there's certain things that we can do very well, and there's certain things we can't control. So diabetes, in terms of someone got diabetes or not, there's certain things that happen. So for example, the risk factors of diabetes, if you're someone that has a family member, like a first relative that has diabetes, it doesn't mean you're going to get diabetes, but it increases your risk, right? Because genetics plays a role. So for example, if me and now papa now sister have diabetes, it increases your risk of getting diabetes. It doesn't mean that ubenya be for sure. It just increases your risk of getting diabetes. And say, oh yeah, before Hispanics, Native Americans, and Native Canadians, Asians have a higher chance of getting diabetes compared to like Caucasians, like white people, right? So sometimes these things you can't change, because you can't change the color you are, and you can't change your parents. You can't choose your parents. So you get what you get. So that's some of the things that we can change, right? But there's so much things that we can change that can also put a person at risk. So our lifestyle, like how we're living. So what you're eating plays a big role, whether you're active or not. So when you exercise, and that's when you exercise, it plays a role. If you live a high stress life, so stress puts a lot of people like cause a lot of people to get diabetes. Like I can't talk about that enough, because most people think that, oh, because I ate this, that's why I have diabetes. But majority of the time in my clinics, most of the people that come there is because of stress. Because when your body is under a lot of stress, like remember I mentioned earlier, our energy is sugar. So whenever our body is under a lot of stress, our body, there's stress hormone that's being released in our body. And those stress hormones, their job is to cause your body, the different organs in your body to release sugar into your bloodstream to manage the stress. Because whenever we're under stress, our body is built to give us the energy to deal with the stress. And the energy that we need is sugar or glucose, right? So when we're under a lot of stress, our body releases a lot of sugar into our bloodstream to deal with the stress. So that's why if you're under stress constantly all the time, that can cause, and it can lead to damages in the body. It can lead to diabetes, right? So stress is very, it's something that we don't talk about enough, especially in our community, but it's something that is causing a lot of people to either move, even those that have pre-diabetes, so they don't have diabetes yet, so their sugar is kind of hanging on borderline. And usually it's the stress that pushed them over to type 2 diabetes. So stress, when you're under constant stress, all of that. So if you live a stressful lifestyle, that can increase your risk of getting diabetes. If you're someone that have high cholesterol, if you're already high blood pressure, all of these are some of the risk factors that can also lead to getting diabetes. So this is the background information. So sometimes people would say, well, I don't have any family members that have diabetes. Nobody in my family has it, so how come I have it? So then you have to think of, how are you living your life? Like, are you under a lot of stress? How are you, like, what are you eating? Are you exercising? Are you active? Do you have a lot of mental stress? All of it. And stress is not just mental stress, stress from life, stress from family, stress from illness. So when you're ill, your body is under stress, and the same thing happens, right? Because your body can't tell the difference. When it's stress, and it releases the energy that you need to deal with the stress. So the management of diabetes, it's, for, making sure that you know what your blood sugar is, knowing your blood pressure, knowing your cholesterol, your diet, and your exercise, right? So these are the main things that you use to manage diabetes or to live a healthy life. So this is a lifestyle change for all of us. So whether you have diabetes or you don't have diabetes or you have pre-diabetes, if you're following these rules, you're going to be very healthy and you're going to be very safe. So this is not just for people that have diabetes, right? This is lifestyle management for all of us. So like I talked about again, so stress management is a management, a way to manage diabetes. Healthy eating, physical activity. Of course, if you have diabetes, taking your medications. If you smoke, to avoid smoke. There's no, I smoked a few. It's still not good for you, because when you smoke, you're putting your body at risk for high blood pressure, for high cholesterol, for hypertension, for lung disease, for all kinds of cancers. So if you smoke, there's so many programs out there that can help you quit smoking. Fortunately for us Ghanaians, there's not a lot of us that smoke, thank God. But if you do smoke, there are programs out there that can help you, decrease your smoking to a point where you quit. Because anytime you quit smoking, your body will thank you, because all the different chemicals and all the things that's been happening in the body, most of it is reversible, right? And then of course, watching your alcohol, or if you're going to drink in moderation. So I'm not saying you can't have alcohol. I'm not promoting you to drink if you don't drink, but if you do drink, do it in moderation. That's another way, right? So we'll talk about, actually we'll move on. We'll talk about exercise first. So exercise is that's one way of managing or using the energy. Remember, I talk about sugar being the energy. So if the sugar is in your blood and you exercise, when you're exercising, you need energy to exercise. So the more exercise you do, the better your blood sugar becomes. And exercise doesn't mean say you have to join the gym or you have to, go to all these fancy places. Anything you can do on your own counts. So for example, walking counts as exercise, biking, swimming, dancing at home with your kids, gardening, if it's wintertime, shuffling snow, all of this is exercise, consider exercise, because you're using the energy that's sitting in your blood, right? Which is the sugar. So the more exercise you do, the better your blood sugar becomes. So diabetes management is not just eating very healthy and then never exercising and not taking medication. It's a balance of everything. So you're exercising, you're eating healthy, you're drinking in moderation, you are controlling your stress, all of it work together. so you can control your blood sugar and control your diabetes, right? So in terms of exercise, aerobics exercise, which is any exercise where you, your heart, like dancing, swimming, all of that, where your heart increase in rate, that's good for your heart. It's good for your heart because your heart is getting the exercise as well. And then when we're exercising, we're releasing hormones in our body, they're anti-stress hormones. So this is why exercise is very important, because when you exercise, not only are you using the energy that's sitting in your blood, which is the sugar, but you're also releasing a lot of anti-stress hormones, right? And these anti-stress hormones help your body control, your body control the sugar level. It helps your mental health, right? I call them the feel-good hormone, like endorphins, epinephrine, all of this is released when you're exercising. And dopamine, these are all good for mental stress balance, and it's good for our body. So when we're exercising, we're getting more than just one benefit. We're exercising our heart, which is good, because when you have diabetes, your heart is overworked, right? And we're also controlling our blood sugar because we're using the extra energy that's sitting there, which is the sugar. And we're also releasing anti-stress hormone that helps control not only our stress, but also help relaxes our muscles, help relaxes our blood vessels, our blood pressure goes down, our mental health is improved because of all these chemicals that's being released, right? So exercise is very important. And for it to count as exercise, as long as it's in 10-minute blocks. So if you're going to exercise and count it towards your exercise goal, it has to be at least 10 minutes, right? That's all. So if you can do 10 minutes in the morning, and then let's say 10 minutes in the evening, and you're getting 20 minutes a day, every day, that meets the minimum of 150 minutes, right? If you do 30 minutes, 5 days a week, it helps you meet the 150 minutes. And this is minimum. So this is what all of us should be doing, minimum, right? And if, of course, the more you do, the better it is. So you always start slow, and then you increase as you build tolerance. So if you're someone that haven't exercised, start with 10 minutes, and then 15, then 20, and keep increasing until you feel like you're meeting the goal. And another type of exercise that's very important for diabetes management, especially regarding insulin, is resistant exercise. So any exercise where you're working against your body weight or you're using actual weights, right? So once again, it's not how heavy the weights are, it's just how proper you're doing it, right? And there's so many videos on YouTube, and even if you go to Diabetes Canada, they have, if you Google diabetes.ca or Diabetes Canada, there's on their website, they have exercises that you can do sitting in a chair. So anybody can do it, whether you have a disability and you can't really move too much, you can sit and do some chair exercise because you're still moving your muscles, and that helps improve your insulin resistance, which improves your blood sugar. So any exercise that you do where you're working your arms, or you're working your legs, or you're doing push-ups or sit-up, or you're pushing against the wall, all those exercises help increase muscle mass and burn fat. And whenever fat level goes down, your insulin improves. And when your insulin is working properly, you'll be able to control your blood sugar better, right? So resistant exercise is very important. So in terms of exercise, anything that you can do to manage your, anything you can do, it will help you manage your blood sugar, right? So exercise, very important. And then I'll move on quickly to cholesterol. So cholesterol management, cholesterol doesn't directly affect blood sugar, but if you're someone that has high cholesterol, right? Cholesterol just means that you have a little bit of more fat in your tube, like in your arteries, right? So the arteries that the blood flows through is being blocked by fat. And usually cholesterol is you get it from animal source, and our body makes its own cholesterol. So 80% of cholesterol is made by our body itself, because cholesterol is needed to make cell membranes, and it needs to make hormones and all of that. So cholesterol is not bad, but if it becomes too much, where it's from the diet, then it can cause coating in your arteries, which can lead to a lot of heart diseases, right? So if your cholesterol level is high and your doctor told you that your cholesterol level is high, be careful. Then be mindful that the tubes that your blood is flowing through, it's getting clogged up. And remember, diabetes makes your sugar becomes like thick, to say a wall, like honey, like thick, like syrup. And it's very slow, very slowly. That's how your blood becomes. It flows very slowly, right? And because in doing that, it's causing damages. It's making the arteries stiff, right? So imagine you'll have a thick blood flowing through a narrow tube because there's too much fat in it. And because now that the blood is very thick, your heart has to push with a lot of pressure to get the blood circulating. And when it's pushing with a lot of pressure in a tube that's full of fat, if any of that fat breaks off, like the plaque breaks off from the artery and it moves to your brain, that leads to stroke. So you stroke when that happens. If it moves and it's, it blocks an artery that's, supplying the heart, that's a heart attack. If it moves and it, blocks an artery that's going down the legs, right? That's, that's DVT. So that can cause blockage in the legs, it causes pain in the leg, and it can lead to other cardiovascular diseases. It goes in the lungs, it can lead to embolism, right? So there's a lot of things that can happen if that fat gets pushed around. So it's very important, if you manage your cholesterol, you're helping your body manage your blood pressure at the same time. Because if the tube is free and it has no fat clotting it, then the blood can move smoothly, right? And you can get all the blood to your vital organs that you need. But if it's blocked, then it's causing a lot of pressure, it's causing a lot of plaque that can break and cause a lot of damage in the body, right? Like heart attacks, strokes, and all of that, right? So managing your cholesterol is very important. If you're someone that don't know where you're at, every year, if you have diabetes, once a year, you should get your cholesterol checked. If you don't have diabetes and your age, like you're less than 40, then at least once a year, or once every 3 years, once every 3 years, you go and get your cholesterol checked, right? At least just to know where you're at in terms of that. And then you eat accordingly, like you eat very healthy, and we'll talk about eating later on, right? So of course, be smoke-free. Diabetes can cause damages in the nerve because the sugar foods the nerves, and then the nerves are not working properly. And the nerves is what helps you feel, right? So if the nerves are being coated, then for example, especially in the lower, like in the legs, if you step on something sharp, you might not feel it. It can lead to wound infection that can lead to amputation, or if nothing happens. So, and the nerves, it works throughout our whole body. Nerve control, there's nerves that controls everything in our body, right? So if diabetes, sugar cause nerve damage, it's causing a lot of damages in the body, the eye, the heart, the lungs, your stomach, like your liver, everything is affected by it, right? So it's important that whatever you do to manage your diabetes, think of it as you're doing your whole body a favor because you're taking care of a lot of things, right? So I'm not sure the audience that I have, like I know this is diabetes management, but I'm taking this as more of just giving general education tips to help you. So if you have diabetes, it can help you. If you don't, same tips. For those people that have diabetes, if you are checking your blood sugars at home, then these are the numbers that you're looking at. So there's different numbers that we look at. There's numbers that when you do blood work, we look at, that's your A1C, and that's telling us how your blood sugar has been for the past 3 months. And usually if we're going to prescribe medication for you because you have diabetes, or see how your diabetes is being managed, we look at that number, and it's called the hemoglobin A1C. And this is done through blood work every 3 months. Some people every 6 months, depending on the doctor and how, what's going on in your body, right? So that's different from the numbers that you're seeing here. So for people that are checking, this is called finger prick. When you prick your finger and you're checking your blood sugar, that's the sugar in your blood at that moment. So that's what you're checking. And that's for people that have diabetes anywhere. So fasting, meaning before meal, so before breakfast, before lunch, before dinner. If you check your sugar anywhere between 4 to 7 is considered normal if you have diabetes. If you don't have diabetes and your doctor told you that you're borderline, then we want the number to be less than 6 before meals, right? And if you're going to check after a meal, if you want to see how your food is affecting your blood sugar, you can check your sugar after you eat, and you need to give yourself 2 hours. So 2 hours after meal, if you need to check to see how the food affected your blood sugar, or for example, if you exercise and you wanted to see how the exercise affected your blood sugar, you check 2 hours after. We want anywhere between 5 to 10 is normal for someone with diabetes. If you don't have diabetes, once again, the number is much tighter because we're trying to prevent you from getting diabetes. So then it has to be under 8, right? So these are the numbers if you're pricking your finger at home. And not everybody does this, and not everybody's here, but I'm just putting it out there for those that are managing. These are the numbers that you're supposed to be looking at. And if you are meeting this number, it means that the A1C, which is the 3-month average, will be around 7%. And that's the goal for someone with diabetes. If you have diabetes, we want the 3-month average to be about 7%, because that tells us that your diabetes is being managed well, your body is not developing any complications, and things are going well. The higher the number goes, the more complications you develop, right? So it's important, if you have diabetes, to know that number. If you don't take anything from this presentation and you have diabetes, make sure you know what your A1C is. So write it down, ask your doctor, what's my A1C? Because that could determine how your diabetes is being managed, and the medication that you're on, if it's not right for you, we can change it. And like, for example, if you come to see somebody like myself or any of the educators, we can have your doctor change the medication based on the A1C to help you prevent complications, okay? And then we move to alcohol. So once again, if you don't drink, please don't start. But if you do drink, you know, too much of everything is not good, right? So alcohol, especially as Christians, we know that, you know, like, we're not supposed to be drinking alcohol. Depends on what church you go to and the rules, right? So if you are going to drink and you have diabetes, you are allowed to have some alcohol, but it has to be in moderation, because alcohol is empty calories. So meaning it goes in your body, it doesn't really improve anything. It doesn't even do any, it has no benefit for you, right? So if you're going to drink, and the more the alcohol content, the less of it you can have. So for example, if you're comparing beer to like rum, you can have very little of rum. So rum, one shot is like a drink. Whereas beer, you know, you can have one can of beer and that's considered one drink, because the alcohol content in beer is like 5%. It's less than when it's in like rum and other things, like 24%, 40% alcohol, right? So if you're going to drink, for men, no more than 14 drinks in 2 weeks. And for women, under like no more than 9 drinks in 2 weeks. So if you're someone that drinks alcohol, like if you have alcohol once a day and with a meal, never drink on an empty stomach when you have diabetes, because it can cause your sugar to drop too low, where it can lead to all kinds of problems, right? The sugar, we don't want it high, but we don't want it too low, because when it's too low, then your body can't function. If it's too high, then it's not good for you. So everything has to be a balance. So drinking alcohol can cause hypoglycemia, which is extremely low blood sugar or dangerously low blood sugar 24 hours after drinking. So be mindful, if you're someone that have diabetes, if you're going to drink alcohol, have it with a meal. So at least you have the energy coming from the food. So if in case that you start to go into hypoglycemia, you have sugar on board to release into your bloodstream. And also, if you're going to drink. So women, no more than 9 drinks. And with alcohol and with food, you can't save up. So you can't say, well, Juliet said you can have 9 drinks in a week. So I didn't drink any all week. So on the weekend, I'm going to have all my 9 drinks. That doesn't work. That's called binge drinking. If you do that, it can lead to Alzheimer's disease, hypertension, heart diseases, and stroke very quickly, because it's like when you put all the alcohol in your body becomes very stressed. There's too much for it to deal with, right? So if you're going to drink in moderation, like every day or a little bit, rather than binge drinking. Never okay for you to binge drink, because you can send your body into a dangerous hypoglycemia or very extremely low blood sugar. So if you're drinking, drink moderately and keep yourself safe, because you don't want to cause any damage in your body. Okay, and I'll take more. I know questions will come up when it comes to later on when it comes to alcohol. And then diabetes management. Diabetes is managed with medication. So if you have type 2 diabetes, which is the diabetes that usually happen in adults, where your body makes some insulin but doesn't really make enough, with that type of diabetes, you can take oral medication, so pills, right? You can take pills to manage your diabetes as long as you have type 2 diabetes, and that as long as your body is able to make some insulin, right? So somebody with type 2 diabetes can manage it with diet alone, so healthy eating, exercising, and that's for them, that's good enough. For some people, it's pills with healthy eating and stress management, and that. Some is pills plus insulin, and some is just insulin, right? So people with type 1 diabetes, remember, they're the ones that their body doesn't make any insulin at all. They have to take insulin before each meal, because then they need to put the hormone in their body in order to be able to use the energy from the food, right? So for people with type 1, they have to inject insulin before each meal. People with type 2 diabetes, like I said, based on your A1C and based on what's happening in your body, you have different treatments. Right now, there's even more treatment besides just insulin. There's other injectable medication that helps you lose weight and help control cholesterol and blood sugars as well. So there's tons of medication out there, much better than it used to be. So if you're someone that have diabetes and you've been on medication for all these years, but you don't see any improvement and you're developing complications over and over, you know, you need to get a diabetes educator or speak to someone that can help you, because sometimes some of the doctors out there, not that they're neglecting you, but it's like they're not doing anything to help you. I've seen a lot of clients that they've been on same medication for a long time and there's so much damage that's being done because there's so much other better medication out there. So, you know, always seek to see what's out there that can help me manage my diabetes. So those that take insulin, you can have type 2 and still take insulin, because your pancreas, that sells the organ that makes the insulin, it can come up to a point where it doesn't make any more insulin, right? And if that happens, then you have no choice but to put the insulin there, right? So you can have type 2 diabetes and also use insulin. For women that are pregnant and have gestational diabetes, because you are carrying a baby and for your health and the baby's health, if we find out that you have high sugars, we usually give you 2 weeks to see with diet and exercise to see if you can improve it. If not, then we put you on insulin. So when you're pregnant, you should not be taking any oral pills in terms of diabetes medication. There's no diabetes medication pill that's safe for your baby. So it should always be insulin if you have diabetes. If you have gestational diabetes, or if you have diabetes and you're pregnant, all the pills will be put on hold and then you take insulin. And once you deliver your baby and you're healthy and you want to go back to the pills, that's fine. But once you have a baby in you, you cannot take the pills because they can cause so much damage to the baby, right? So these are some of the diabetes medication. So I'll go back to that diet because, you know, I know usually people are wondering, so then what do I eat? So, and I get a lot of question about, can I eat my Ghanaian food even though I have diabetes? Of course, right? So we all come from different backgrounds, and us Ghanaians, you know, were raised with certain food, and there's really nothing wrong with our food. Like if you think back to all the foods that we used to eat back home, there's nothing really wrong with them, and some of them are pretty balanced, right? You know, it depends on your, you know, your like your family and money and all of that, but usually it's pretty balanced. So there's nothing wrong with the food that we eat as Ghanaians. We just have to watch the type of food that I said turns to sugar, or the food that has natural sugar in them. So if you can see the rainbow here, all those that are on Zoom, you can see that on the diabetes food guide, you have vegetables being the biggest part of the rainbow that you see here. And then you have your carbohydrate, it says carbohydrate foods underneath. So those foods, so your grains and starches, your fruits and your milk and alternatives, these are the foods that has natural sugar. So these foods, when you eat them, your body breaks it down, and what you get from it is natural sugar. That's our energy foods. So this is the food that we get energy from, right? So we need them. We need to eat them, whether you have diabetes or not. We need it. But if you have diabetes, you have to watch the amount of it that you eat it, right? Because when you sit down to eat, if I sit down to have my, you know, my food, what I'm eating at this moment is what's going to determine how my blood sugar is, right? So when you're eating your meal, you need to be mindful in making sure that it's balanced, right? So, and then you have your protein foods, and protein, you can get it from animal source or plant source. So animal source is like your egg, your chicken, your beef, your all the different kinds of animals out there, right? That's your animal. And then you have your plant. So plant source of proteins, beans, lentils, legumes, and also your seeds and nuts. All of them have protein, and they're good for you because it's high in fiber. And fiber helps control our cholesterol level, it helps control our blood pressure, and it keeps our sugar at a normal level. So whatever protein, whenever you're choosing protein, try to choose a balance. So sometimes, so very none, but sometimes you can use beans and lentils as well, right? Just to balance it out. And then you have your fats. So fats, in terms of fat, as you can see, is the smallest in the rainbow, because you don't need a lot. Fat has a lot of energy, meaning it has a lot of calories, and it can make you gain weight. So you need them in very small amounts, right? So when we're cooking, we should use less oils. We should, like butter and all those things, and baking. All of them are fats, and these fats can lead to weight gain, like I said. But there are good fats. For example, things like the good fats are the fats that you get from plant source, like all your oils, you get it from like nuts and seeds, and then the avocados that you get good healthy fats from, because that will help lower your cholesterol. But if you're eating fats from like the saturated fat, like oils and butter and lard and all of that, that's the type of fat that can cause your arteries to be blocked with plaque that can lead to high cholesterol and heart diseases, right? So when we go by, when we're eating, we have to make sure that we're balancing things, right? Remember, everything in a balance. You know, the balance, whenever the balance is off, that's when disease starts to form, right? So everything needs to be working in a balance. So when you're eating a meal, same thing. Because things like how we place the food, for example, your vegetables, all vegetables are some has no to very little carbohydrates. Carbohydrate means that your body breaks down into sugar, right? So all the natural sugars, anything that says carbohydrate means natural sugar in that term. So vegetables has very little. So that's why when you go to anybody that's teaching you about nutritionists or educators, they always tell you have more vegetables, because when you have more vegetables, that means you're eating less of the starchy foods which turn to sugar. So if you're to make sure that you're balancing, half your plate should be vegetables whenever you're eating, right? Depends on what you're having, but half your plate should be vegetables. Then you have your starch, and then you have your protein, then you have your milk, and then you have your fruit. So if you're eating like this, that's a balanced way of eating, so that your body is able to get all the vitamins and minerals that it needs to do its job, to work properly, right? So I always bring my plate. So those of you that can see, like when you have your plate, your normal plate that you eat at home, half of it should be vegetables. Then the other half, if you make a fist, the size of your fist should be your carbohydrate food. So in terms of your grains and starches. So say a mutu, fufu, benku, TZ, whatever it is, you want to stick to the size of your fist, and everybody's fist size fits their body. So if this is my fist size, so if I'm eating my benku or dokuno or whatever it is, it should be about this much. And if it's something that you can measure, so in terms of like rice and pasta, things that you can measure, you can eyeball roughly like that much, or a measuring cup. So if you measure like a cup, that's usually how much, if you have diabetes, that's how much you should be having per meal. So this is per meal, not all day, per meal. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, right? So that should be your starch. And then you have your protein. So your protein, like I said, you get it from animal source or plant source. So either way, you want to stick to the same amount. So in terms of protein, if you open your hand, so the size of a palm of your hand, so right here, so not your whole hand, so the palm of your hand without your fingers, that's how much protein you should be having with the thickness of your pinky, right? So you have to be mindful, because even though protein doesn't turn to sugar, we still have to be mindful, because especially if you're eating meat, that can cause high cholesterol. So choose lean meat, and you still want to stick with that amount, because too much protein can also lead to weight gain, right? And whenever our weight goes up, our insulin resistance goes up, and guess what? Blood sugar starts to go up. So whenever weight goes up, blood sugar goes up with it, right? So we have to make sure that we're balancing everything out. And then you have your fruits. So in terms of fruits, all fruits are good for you. So I know most people say, well, I heard banana has a lot more sugar than this. All fruits are good for you. You're allowed to have 3 fruits in a day. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you can have fruits with your meal, or in between your meals as snacks, however you choose. But any fruit that you eat, be mindful that it has natural sugar, and it will cause your blood sugar to go up, which is normal. So you don't want to eat all your 3 fruits all at once, right? You want to spread it out so that you're not stressing your body. Because if I sit down and I have a big plate of rice, right, like a whole plate of rice, and eat it, my body now is working so hard. My pancreas is working so hard to pump up so much insulin into my bloodstream to remove the sugar. But then if I eat just the right amount, then my pancreas is relaxed, it's not overworked, and then it can do its job properly without causing any damages in my body, right? Because whenever you overeat, you cause a lot of stress to your body in terms of trying to release a lot of things. So like I said, Ghanaian foods are fine, you can have them, just watch the amount. So whatever you're having, whether it's jollof or cocoa and beans, or whatever you choose, just make sure that the portions are very important. It's not the food you're eating, it's the portion. And sometimes people say, well, I eat brown rice compared to white rice. They're both fine. If you're someone that loves brown rice, it's better for you because it has more fiber. And remember, fiber helps clean cholesterol from our body. It helps keep our blood sugar in control, and it helps keep our blood pressure. So if you eat brown rice, it's better for you. But if some people, they cannot eat brown rice for whatever reason, then if you're going to eat white rice, it's the same amount. You have the same amount, about the size of your fist or about a cup. You throw in a lot of vegetables, because then at least you're getting your fiber from your vegetables, right? And then you have your protein, you have your piece of fruit, which also has fiber, and then you have your water or your milk. So one thing I would tell you to stay away from ever is juice or pop, because they're just liquid sugar. It doesn't give us any benefit. It doesn't matter if it says heart healthy on the orange juice. It's not good for your heart. It's not good for you. It's just liquid sugar. It goes in your body. It's already processed, so it turns your blood sugar up and increase it within 15 minutes. So, if you're having a meal, if you want to have a liquid with it, it should be, your tea or coffee if you choose to. But if it's a coffee, make sure you add in milk and not cream, because cream is too much fat, right? And then you use, you try not to add sugar to your food, because that will make your blood sugar spike, right? So water is your best friend. Water is the best fluid. 70% of our body is made with water. That's how much water we need in our system. So the more water you drink, the better it is for you, unless your doctor or your healthcare provider has restricted you because of some background disease. But other than that, in terms of fluid, make sure that you're drinking lots of water, right? So I'm going to end it here, because there's a lot more to talk about, but I know the questions will come in, and with the questions, I'll be able to answer it and then give you some teaching points. Then I'll know the type of audience that I'm dealing with. So I'll end it here, and I'll be open for any questions that you may have.
I don't for so be a question be out to me beside Sister Juliet Emani ya no my.
Pipacho, hello.
Hi. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, it's me, Joshua. Yeah.
Hi, Joshua.
I'm doing person who say how will I know say we am diabetes? I better not be who say more diabetes at the first place, because na many oba na many no na she was a nurse, but I will more na say that now work no sa pina mo de work and sano. I think says you inject my hand and check. It is something I don't know something.
Okay.
But not church, but I really ask a lot much about it. Since you mentioned about say how a better me who said more diabetes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's much important to me. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a good question. So, like I said earlier, not to buha or diabetes are unya symptoms. So, when say be or drink too much, and I say if you are common in tem will lose weight, and need that's an all as an initial greeners and when the basa. These are all signs, right?
Oh, okay.
Usually, unya sign and non-normal onset symptoms no ha. Usually that's what and the bemo doctor that's our healthcare practitioner. But ubu also unya symptoms maybe ubu unya so the doctor how man acquire blood work. So even if either way to confirm whether you have diabetes or you don't have diabetes, you need to do blood work. So usually 40 and up, or what's a we need diabetes now 40 and up, you qualify to go and get your blood work done. Do or physical catch your doctor say you want to know what your blood sugar level is. And they're supposed to do it anyways, right? Once you hit 40, when you go, they will check your blood sugar levels. They will be checking for the A1C that I mentioned. So based on where that number is, will determine whether you have your borderline, if you have diabetes, or if you don't, right? So it's very important. So if you're curious, then I suggest that you see your practitioner and have them do blood work. And that would be the best way for you to know. Yeah.
Okay.
More questions? So what question? Which my typing into the, if you don't feel comfortable speaking, which my typing it in the chat as well.
Hello, Mama. The best me be say, And this will be in your diabetes. Is there, apart from severe medication, will be a better transfer for the rest of her life, you know? Before for a while, we'll to avoid the medication one.
Okay, so nina jina baby our blood sugar no that, right? Say blood sugar no. So your blood work. Let's say, for example, like I said, ubuha or diabetes, but take care drubia because with diet and exercise, the stress management, you know, is able to keep the sugar no in safe target, right? If, for example, say we check your blood, for blood work. That's all check your A1C. You know, that's what we were looking at. So they look at your A1C and that's it. It's at 7% or lesser. Then usually most doctors will not prescribe any medication, right? Because that's the goal. The target goal is to be 7% or less. Into 7% or less, that means that your diabetes is managed well, and that you're not developing any complications. Unless, say, for example, or other diseases. So, for example, if high blood pressure, right? Now, if you have diabetes, I can't. Because diabetes is so hard on the heart. So, for example, so what 30 years now you're diagnosed with diabetes. In terms of age, wakuma age, you know, even though you're 30 years, and it's like so wakuma you're 45 years. So it's 50. The diabetes, it's that hard on the body. It's like 50. It makes your body age about 15 years in terms of how your internal organs are functioning. It is all diabetes. Now, or high blood pressure. Now, if you have diabetes, sometimes they'll put you on certain medication to protect the heart, that protects the heart, right? So the medication that you're put on, sometimes it's not just for diabetes, but it's also to prevent other complications because you have diabetes, right? So you could be put on medication to help, so you'll be, I'm not saying be a mood. They could be put on medication to lose weight, right? And because when your weight goes down, your blood sugar improves, right? And sometimes if you have heart diseases, like other heart problems, you'll be put on a combination of medication that protects the heart and the kidney. And that way, even though that, like when those are protected and you're doing well in terms of that, then your blood sugar will improve as well. So remember, blood sugar, diabetes affects everything, and everything affects diabetes. When we're happy, our body's releasing sugar. When we're sad and stressed, our body's releasing sugar. So everything that a person does, because sugar is our energy, affects diabetes. So sometimes the medication you're put on medication depends on what's happening with you. So you could be off medication and still be managing your diabetes well, but it all depends on what's happening in your body. And not obia diabetes near the same. This is your diabetes, obia managing it differently because we're doing it based on your blood work and what's happening in your body. You know, for example, never say, "Oh, madam, we no madrowe or no me one pant, miss me try." That's not how it works because a drug it is too hard on the kidney. So what diabetes crown, I say a bebwa because I said better damage your kidney, it won't put you on it. And now say a drug cause liver problem amount. And now already, no say I will live and you're checking where it is, and it's not safe for us to put you on. So always stick with the medication that your doctor prescribed to you. And it's because it's based on, especially diabetes, it's based on your blood work and what's happening in your body. So there's so many things that you can do. There's natural medication that people use. I have people, I went to Jamaica, I brought this bitter leaf, and I'm using it. Information just so you know the pros and cons of taking it, right? So we encourage you to do whatever you want to do, but when you're doing it, you work with your practitioner to make sure it's safe for you, because the main goal is you don't want to cause any damage in your body, right? Because some of the side effects of the medication can cause damage, and sometimes through medication, if you're taking, let's say, a diabetes pill and then a herbal medication, the combination, it can interact and can cause problem for you. So, you know, it depends on what's happening. So everybody's diabetes is different and is managed completely differently. And there are people that I help, that I work with, that only use diet and exercise alone, no medication. And there are some that are on multiple doses of insulin because that's what's happening in their body. So they need to deal with that, right? So. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
No problem. No problem. And that's a way of business also. Like I had a person that Ghana, and also Ghana, the goal they say obeja in the diabetes a droning in anum. Now and I say try a baby draw. There's nothing wrong with that. Say a new goal, make sure say when you're doing that, you put aside the diabetes medication, so they herb now say baby draw now we take it. Say be happy and you know which one is causing it, because we take you diabetes now say no maybe do so. So be happy and you won't be able to tell which is which or what's interacting with what. Just be mindful. If you want to experiment, that's okay, but just put one at the side and do one thing at a time. So and try no baby at the same time, one thing at a time, and see how you do. You're checking your blood sugar as you go along to make sure you're safe. Intuition as a new okay, and then you can try the next one, and then you see. So then, if something happens, then you'll be able to rule out what's causing the problem for you.
So, Auntie Juliet, patchomet me a bisa question, Kaka.
Of course.
Okay. The question person bisa say, diabetes no, yeah the wo, and now say, akola from 5 years up to 18 years, ibetimi enya. Na obinya diabetes ya, enuani bi ti say McDonald's, Subway, any Burger King. Okay,
good question. So, yes, diabetes, the wo in a sense, it's genetics, meaning, say, for example, so obinyam, that's when diabetes, nebano, but nebano now because of certain amount of diabetes, it increases their risk, or increases their chance of getting diabetes, right? And your friend say, there's also gestation. So the gestational diabetes puts the baby at risk. And I said, Akrana and chronic will also are based on genetics. And this one up to now, there's no clear explanation. And that's type 1 diabetes. Because type 1 diabetes, usually we used to call it juvenile onset diabetes, meaning that it happened. Usually most people that were diagnosed with it were under 18, right? And it's an autoimmune disease. So type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease. It means that it's like your immune system attacks the cells that makes the insulin and it destroys it, right? There's no explanation why. There's so many autoimmune diseases where your body is like attacking itself and then you get sick from it, right? So that type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease. So when that happens, your body stops making insulin because the cells that makes it are damaged in the pancreas, right? So in those sense, those kids, when they eat before each meal, they need to inject insulin before they can use the energy, right? And usually it's not because their mom had gestational diabetes. There's so many kids that have diabetes, type 1 diabetes, that nobody in their family has it because it's an autoimmune disease. But in terms of obinyam, or diabetes, nebano, later on in life can develop diabetes based on their lifestyle and what's happening. So having the genetics background and then also their lifestyle and what's happening. And in terms of food, right? So things like McDonald's, Burger King, like all the fast food, right? In terms, it's not the best food to eat because, there's a lot of processing, right? So in Yanana, you'll turn outside, usually it's very processed. And in the process, there's a lot of fat and salt that's added to it. And because there's so much fat and salt added to it, doing that itself will cause, your blood pressure to go high, because any food that has a lot of salt or sodium will make your pressure go high, right? And then also there's a lot of fat, right? Because fat makes food taste good, like things like McDonald's, Burger King, and all of that. There's a lot of fat in it. So the fat in it makes the food taste good, so the kids will want it. It's not the best for them because once you eat those food, and especially now, people are not very active. So this is all the time. It makes us gain weight. And remember, as we gain weight, as our weight goes up, our insulin resistance goes up. Meaning that the insulin, if it was working like okay before, now it's starting not to work, right? So the sugar starts to rise. So whenever weight goes up, insulin resistance goes up, meaning that your blood sugar is going higher, right? And it can lead to pre-diabetes, diabetes, and all those things. And to avoid diabetes, of course, once in a while, remember, diabetes is not a life sentence that you can't ever eat any other food. You can enjoy these foods because these are treats. So for example, if you have kids, once in a while you buy the McDonald's or pizza or whatever, that's okay, once in a while. But it shouldn't be a routine, because if it becomes a routine, that's when we get in trouble, and then we gain a lot of weight from it. And because we're gaining weight, our cholesterol is going up, our heart pressure is going up. So they can have it once in a while, but it shouldn't be a routine. It's better to cook the food at home because you know what you're putting in your food and you know what you're feeding your kids, right? But once in a while, if it's like birthday or certain events, and they can, it's fine. They can have it because everybody deserves to feel like they're, you know, they're human and we're not robots, right? So they can have it, but in small amounts, right? And not so often. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Departure. Oh. Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah. Departure. Not just say diabetes. No. Say obi wodia. Not just say and I see the one like how it's being said. No. Not just say nipa no. There's no way he or she is going to get out of it. Not just say no is going to be managed through the exercise and drugs and all that. Like so be one like he or she is not going to get out of it.
Yeah.
Huh.
So the reason why cancer diabetes it's not cured. They say, for example, let's say they say you have diabetes, right? So usually when
Yeah.
people are told they have diabetes, no, of course, you react. You start the DA, you start your exercise. Doctor better drama, you swallow. As a beginning, because most of the time there's fear. And then, like, oh my God, I have diabetes, I have to do all these things. So usually at the beginning, people take care of themselves very well, right? And while you're
Okay.
doing that, your blood sugar improves very good. No complications, everything is fine. You're living your normal life, everything's fine. The minute you stop doing those things, right? Remember, life happens. Let's say, God forbid, now we're in COVID. Let's say,
Yeah.
someone passed away. There's a lot of stress from work. You lost your job. All those things become stress on the body, right?
Mm.
So now, even though we were managing our diabetes and everything was well, now we have stress. And because of that stress, our body is now reacting. And how is our body reacting? By releasing a lot of sugar, because whenever we're under stress, the energy to deal with it is sugar, right? Glucose. So our body's releasing a lot of stress hormones that it thinks it's helping us manage the stress, but it's making your sugar go high. And because of that, at that moment, your blood sugar starts to rise, right? Again, right? So because that can happen, that's why we say that diabetes is not cured. It could be managed. And trust me, it could be managed very well without any complications. Like I said, I have very old people coming to my office and they've had diabetes for years, right?
Oh, okay.
Because they're eating healthy. And remember, this is not just for people with diabetes, this is for all of us. Whether you have diabetes or not, healthy eating and health, this prevents you from getting all other complications in life, right? Because if you're not eating healthy, you're not exercising, you're drinking whatever you want, you're not sleeping properly, all of that eventually will have a tone on your life, right? And it will affect you and it can cause something. It might not be diabetes, but it will be something else, right? So with diabetes, we say healthy lifestyle. So it's not a quick fix. And usually because people want it to be a quick fix and they do everything very well for, let's say, 3 months, 4 months, 1 year, when life happens and something happens, now their diabetes start to go under uncontrolled. And that's when, the complications will start. So that's why we say diabetes doesn't have a cure, because all the good things that you're doing, as soon as it goes away or you stop doing them, and you can see the blood sugar start to rise again. And this is why when someone has diabetes, you have a lot of team working with you, and every 3 months or every 6 months, you're going for blood work, and we're looking at to see, okay, well, her liver is good, her kidney is functioning well, her diabetes is being managed well, her sugar is in control, and we're checking all these every 6 months, because anything can happen. Because sometimes you could be under stress and not even feel like you're under stress. But whether you feel it or not, your body's reacting, and you're there's a lot of things that's happening inside the body. Without blood work, you might not know. So that's why we say there's no cure, right? It's just managed, and you just manage it, and you live your life the same way everybody else does, just trying to balance things out and live a healthy lifestyle. Yeah.
Okay. That's it. That's it. Right.
Hello.
Hi.
Enti na kyerɛ sɛ diabetes no stress pa na ɛde ba wo ho.
Stress stress pa. Not stress but usually no the fact that will be diabetes no running in. That's a was that genetic background, that's a stress out the it really causes the body to react. Yeah. So stress is very important. So necessary stress no be any we all do, it comes and goes, depends on what's happening in life, right? It is a stress in the bar. Anything that helps you de-stress will be any how I react. For example, or your stress or far from no fruit not in the bunk or and what on. Obu also artist or social worker. Obu or read the Bible and also read the book and also be honest to managing the stress. It is a war stress. Whatever you do normally to manage, it's still you still feel tense and you still feel under stress. And usually you know this because you can't sleep. If you're not sleeping, that's the sign that you're under a lot of stress, right? So you're not sleeping well, and if you're not sleeping well, you're going to start to gain weight. Your body's releasing a lot of stress hormone. You're gonna gain weight, usually around the belly, right? And usually our vital organs are all around that area. So the more weight you gain around there, the more insulin resistant you become, and that can lead to diabetes and other complications, right? So if you are under stress, and like I said, ubia was stressing me. If you're under stress, whatever you need to de-stress, that's what you do. So sometimes you need to speak to you feel stressed. You need to speak to someone because when you're under stress, it can lead to all kinds of mental issues and mental illness. Mental illness is it's an illness just like any illness. So we will anxiety, distress, and also we will depression. It is also diabetes. It's a diagnosis. It's a condition in the body. It needs to be dealt with, right? So especially usually we will, as I can say to me, I said depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, and all those other seasonal affective, all those mental illness. Now, you think it's a here. But remember, the air crop so affects your body. Because if you're not able to, deal with what's happening in life, it causes you stress. When stress happens, hormones are released. That's releasing a lot of chemicals in your body that's causing you to get sick. And guess what? You become physically sick. Plus the mental illness, which is also another thing to deal with. So if you're under stress and you feel that you're overwhelmed, you need to speak to someone. Right? You need to speak. If you don't trust, say, speak to your healthcare provider. Catch your doctor, say, this is what's happening to me. They can refer you to see a social worker, a counselor. They can refer you to see a psychologist or psychiatrist. And not just about them. And I want everybody to understand that mental illness does not mean about them. That's not what it means. It just means that whenever there's mental illness, it means there's chemicals in the body, in the brain that's imbalanced. Just like or diabetes, it's hormones in your pancreas that's imbalanced, which is the hormone, which is insulin, that's not working properly. That's why your sugar is high. When you have depression or anxiety or schizophrenia or seasonal affective disorder, all those mental illnesses, it just means that there's chemicals in your brain, same thing like that's imbalanced, like dopamine, serotonin, all of that. So if those are imbalanced, sometimes what do? You need to, it's counseling, doing things that's going to cause your body to release more of those hormones, which is exercising. Like I said, the more you exercise, the more you release those healthy hormones in your brain for your brain to function well. And sometimes because it's chemical imbalance, just like ubu or diabetes, no being injecting itself with insulin, no. Ubu or mental illness, that's all they can do, not still balance in its offer. Then you need to take medication to cause your brain to release those hormones to help you stay stable. It doesn't mean sababodam. It just means that your body is lacking those things, and that's what you need to put there to help you. So I know, say usually, mental illness, but it all affects us. So who are diabetes, that's also anxiety, and that's depression. Unless the depression and the anxiety is taken care of, they're not going to worry about their diabetes, because anyone who is so anxious, the last thing they're worrying about is their blood sugar. And remember, because whenever we have all these mental stress, what happens to our body? Our body releases a lot of sugar, and that sugar will make your diabetes worse. and it affects your whole body. So whatever you do to help your mental health helps your body, right? When your body is relaxed and under less stress and under less anxiety, you're able to function well at work. You're able to socialize with your family, so you're a better mom or better husband or better wife, right? Because everything is balanced. If you have healthy mental stress, you're able to take care of yourself. If you have diabetes or not, you're able to eat healthy, balanced, and stuff. So everything, mental health and physical health, goes hand in hand. One has to work before the other one works. So you can't just ignore the mental stuff and try to deal with the physical stuff. It's both. So if you have any kind of, or know anybody that's going through something, encourage them to get the help they need, because the last thing we want is people to neglect their health because of what's happening in their mental state. So mental health is very important, just like physical health, and that alone can lead to anxiety. If it's not dealt with, it can lead to heart disease, because every time your anxiety comes up and you're in a panic attack, your body tenses up, your pressure goes up. It feels like you're having a heart attack because all your body, more than go through your body now. I also call, let's say, your body restrict everything and try to pull it to your brain so you can function, because you're going through crisis. And when you're under that constant stress, it's not good for you. It can lead to heart attacks and it can lead to strokes as well. So go hand in hand. So we have to be very careful and mindful of that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
No problem. Any more questions?
And I'm so be a question be a my nebisa. With sister Juliet warrior in chain dear, the CEO ya gene confornum. Na or year no amount, na who's a near no. So be any being so dear, sister Juliet. Ever for Quenya ni yada wasi bebre.
Of course.
Yamin shroud.
Amen.
I say, was a marina waba, no abache and quanya and faswa. Bet me avoid the anasi be who said you be see ben and manage diabetes. Yada health department, so asi, Sister Angelina, and Nedom, yada munina asi. Inti, say, we and yet ye kind and then yet ye be chat to Sister Juliet. Invitation is, we extend our invitation for you to come again.
Of course.
Sorry, a bit to me an education, because I really want Sanipum. When him say we aquatia 10 to
Anybody, yeah.
It to me, and I'm on you bit too. Tia de Yamiasipa.
I thought Obi walk. The kind maybe I know Obi ma Emma we no so say Uni Mobina say we need papers. Now Komi and so yare and answer Bibisa. Please let me know. Now because there's so many programs that will Komi government no when nimse nipa bebre waha or money papers. And now on Canada and the US for yare we have to take care of you. And I say, we say, what the Canada won't be to ya, then the very young right? And government didn't say, Nipa baby, how many papers? It say, baby, I'm here, my only papers, cry, and that's only hip cry, and a bit mashed or diabetes, I'll bet my baby without him. And say, your friends say, oh, other conditions, be not also quite blood work in now, or charge you. Yeah, Honosono. So buy a while, you bet me up. Maybe blood work will be in charge of her. And in terms of enroll, especially enroll for diabetes near them. I work with most of the drug companies. So say Obi here more, it's me troll at the common say, okay, any power here say, wait my boy, our mind really be I didn't any panel for free. With programs when now until we hear any help be let me know. And I say Obuni will be. That's all I have, because usually in your back room you need papers because of first of all you throw say about hospital because in say quiet baby room. That's one thing. And second thing because now health winning the main focus because of our Jessica. But there's programs out there will be best out That's all. Wow, the space is a bit mako. Any of those things, I'm gonna put my email in the chat. So will be my refer. The number, so it's everywhere. I'll put my number here too. You can WhatsApp me, you can send me a message, and then I'll do whatever I can. The meet my I'll do help in any way.
Yo, that's be brave. I mean, show. I said, yeah, what about your assurance in society? You any information, you remember, you refer on what I said, yeah, on us be more. That's a pa, I mean, show.
Amen.
And Hannah and Mary Bema and Quine am I in DSC. I'm say, sending you D kind, or the information man I available said and the contacts, Yen Sabeka, let's will be here more. Say, no cry, no him one, let's will be for the him more. It's me refer. That's it. Genia. Then Chahon says, Sister Angelina, our line so. The rest of now, what conclude what my na what bompire and so. Am I? So, Sister Angelina, and who I best Sister Juliana Wilson. The Sister Juliana Wilson, our line so I best non a bompire my.
Chow or ya available right now.
No, and ya who shall who the any bomb.
Matanya Maso, any dear mo, I'm a bompire now. And find my gym maybe. Otum for young coupon, and you may umma yadawasi. Yadawasi pa wa quenya wa my yinya. Umede moon shrine cabia with your guyanso. And I was the life of Sister Juliet. The shroud of man on your number, so they are to me in Ray, and I was be brave. So, because we shall what training shame, not in a year, you may be, I shall win you, yam. The Yati, what is it to me? And the Juma, I just out what to me. And it is slow, say, the Yati, about the father to me, and the entry from Bubra, then where near to trust and what you near to soon. And showed him Kunqueno yam. Ready to make a baby, a giant winning armor, and a dry cotty day. You are dear storm above 4 years and I'm way now by Monsieur de Sambia there, or therefore you need a free hole. You're wrong with me. Now we send a beshlau me, but it's here, and a man shall be so. Can I want a dear dim or child program Nina, and in a real cream team? Way and a crack condo, when he has slow saying Ray, Fadumia, who yes, Christ to demo. And he say, and ye shall my day, amen.